evidence that I have of foreknowledge, but just a couple of telling points. Israeli security issued urgent warning to CIA of large-scale terror attacks. And this is a long story saying that the Israeli Mossad knew that the attacks were going to take place. They knew that the World Trade Center were the targets. This is from the British paper The Telegraph. Two senior experts with Mossad were sent to Washington in August to alert the CIA, and so on and so forth. This is just one of probably 24 examples that I have that are absolutely specific. Now bear in mind that if what I'm showing you is known overtly through the media, how much more does our $30 billion intelligence community know? There's a recurring theme out there that maybe the Israelis did this. You hear that in some right-wing circles. Horsepucky. They didn't do it. They were warning the U.S. hand over fist, and the U.S. did not listen because it needed the attacks. And you will be convinced of that. But here's one of the most telling pieces of evidence that I found. We reviewed the list of former tenants of the World Trade Center at the online Wall Street Journal site, and there's the website. It is an alphabetical list of tenants. Scroll to the very bottom and notice the moving date for the office of Zim American Israeli Shipping to Norfolk, Virginia. They were in the World Trade Center. They must have had Mossad's input because they vacated 1 week before September the 11th, and they broke their lease. The Israelis didn't pull the attack, but they were smart enough to get their people out of the way. How come our government didn't do the same thing for us? Now we're getting into the heart of September the 11th. I picked up this document just a few days after the attacks, September 23rd. And it's from the Herzliya Institute for Counterterrorism. It is an Israeli counterterrorist think tank. Of course it's connected with the Mossad. And what they detailed, this is from the October 15th issue of From the Wilderness. Between September 6th and 7th, the Chicago Board of Options Exchange saw purchases of 4,744 put options on United Airlines and only 396 call options. A put option is basically a bet that the stock price is going to go down. It's a contract that's entered into that's irrevocable, and let's say the gentleman in the suspenders, I do a put option deal with you to sell shares at $100 in 2 weeks, 4 months. 4 months is the standard, but you can write the contract for anything you want. And he's committed now to buy the shares for $100. Well, if I know that the attacks are going to take place, I don't have to deliver the shares until the contract matures. So if I know the stock is going to crash, he enters into a put agreement with me, agrees to buy the shares at $100. The next day the World Trade Center attacks happen. The stocks are selling for $20. I go buy the shares for $20, and he has to buy them for $100. That's how a put option works. That's the short version, okay? So we saw 4,744 put options on United Airlines, but only 396 call options. On September the 10th, 4,516 put options, same deal, were placed on American Airlines, bought on the Chicago Exchange, compared to only 748 calls. There were no other similar trades on any other airlines. And this level of put options was like 600 to 1,200% above normal for United and American Airlines. Now, just these trades alone, there were also put options placed on Merrill Lynch, which had 22 floors. Morgan Stanley had 22 floors, and Merrill Lynch had an offices near. Both were heavily impacted. Heavy put options there, heavy put options on reinsurance companies, Munich Reinsurance, the largest in the world, AXA Reinsurance in France, which owned 25% of American. Totally out of whack. Absolutely spiking. There's another newsletter that says very clearly, by a guy by the name of Phil Erlanger, and this is his newsletter, that the insider trading may have cost $1 billion. Now just these ones that were identified, produced only $2.5 million in instant profits for somebody who knew the attacks were going to take place. Nobody claimed the profits. The San Francisco Chronicle caught it shortly thereafter, and nobody has claimed them since. And we don't know who made the trades. But what did the Herzliya Institute for Counterterrorism tell us? It told us that the United Airlines put options were placed through the firm A.B. Brown. Do you remember A.B. Brown? A.B. Brown was the firm headed until 1998 by A.B. Buzzy Krongard, who is now the executive director of the Central Intelligence Agency. A.B. Brown was sold in 97 to Bankers Trust, then to Deutsche Bank, I think in 98 or 99. It was an offshoot of Deutsche Bank. Now, one thing that I know, that I have written heavily about, is that the CIA, the Mossad, and major intelligence services track all stock trading in real time. On my website, you'll see stories about Promise software, and it's very long to go into, but it's a very sophisticated software. I'm going to write the website for you. It's a very sophisticated software that's been made with artificial intelligence and is capable of integrating wide numbers of databases in different languages. You'll find this on my website at www.copvcia.com. Now, I know that CIA and Mossad track stock trades in real time, so if all these put options were placed on American and United, do you think that should have triggered some alarm inside the Central Intelligence Agency? But instead we find that the trades were placed through a firm that was once owned, managed by the guy who was the number 3 at CIA. This is just pieces of evidence now. I'm building the case. Now, again, we're building up some history here. In January of this year, the Taliban and Al-Qaeda destroyed the entire opium crop in Afghanistan. It's been verified by the United Nations, by the Drug Enforcement Administration, by ABC News, by BBC, who put people on the ground. Afghanistan had been the world's largest producer of opium, producing 70% of the world's heroin through the year 2000. In January, they destroyed their crop. Part of it was a price support. They had overproduced the year before, part of it, and they sold from their stockpiles. But there are no opium crops in Afghanistan right now. They've all been planted, of course, since the Bush administration and the CIA have lifted the ban, and everybody can go back to work and the CIA can move the heroin again.
Something that is not being reported in the US press, but is getting quite wide coverage in England and in Europe, and that is that the result of our backing the Northern Alliance in Afghanistan this year is to restore a heroin flow which would otherwise have been halved or more in the world, because the Taliban not only announced that they were going to outlaw planting, but their decree worked. There was no Taliban opium planted last year, and that meant a reduction of 90% in the amount of opium coming out of Afghanistan, and the 10% that was left represented a radical increase in the areas under Northern Alliance control. Now, if we had not gone into Afghanistan, this would have been the most effective reduction in the flow of heroin in the world since the DEA was created 30 years ago. But by going into Afghanistan, backing the Northern Alliance, we've now chased the Taliban out, and in all kinds of provinces where the farmers had started to plant wheat, they're now plowing up their fields and putting in opium instead. And the global drug authorities at the UN expect that we're going to go back to the record flow of opium that we've seen in the last couple of years.
But we heard right after